set a strong vision. The state superintendent tried to do that as well. Try to hire well. My job becomes so much easier when you hire well. And then always, even when I was superintendent of Guilford County, be sure that folks understand who are really the folks who are doing the work. It's our educators, right? And so try to always elevate our educators, and now trying to do the very same thing in this role as well. So there's lots of things, you try. I learned early on actually something that came from Dr. Pewsley, who was superintendent in Charlotte Mecklenburg schools, that I sort of took with me. Said, Mo, absolutely things you have to lead on. Some stuff you just have to manage, right? But don't allow those things to subsume all of what you're doing. Manage those things, but never forget you've got to lead. And so that's the way we've tried to operate even in this role as well. Manage what has to be managed, but always lead and try to reach the vision that you've set and others have set for our children.
Let's talk about your strategic plan. I want to list a few things. I'm not going to list all of them for the sake of time, but first on that list, as far as initiatives, that includes a $25 million Golden Lead Foundation investment to transform mathematics instruction in rural middle schools, NC College Connect, guaranteeing college admission for students with a 2.8 GPA or higher, expanded mental health support and youth mental health first aid training. I guess, how do you plan to accomplish this? 10 months in office.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, first of all, I need to maybe clarify a couple things as we talk about the strategic plan. One, you shared that it was my plan, and while
Department of Public Instruction.
Well, and even there, I want to clarify because certainly I have a part in it, as does the State Board of Education, which adopted it unanimously. But it is North Carolina's plan. This is North Carolina's plan for public schools. And all of us in this room and beyond have a part to play in it, right? And so that's what I try to clarify when folks say, well, this is my plan, what am I going to do? Certainly I have a role, but all of us have a role in making this successful. So the plan itself, just to be sure folks have a little bit of context around it, it's called Achieving Educational Excellence. It has three major goals: high academic achievement, character development, and then this goal of having the very best public education system in the entire country by 2030. There are 8 pillars that make up the plan. There are actions, of which you've listed a few. 110 actions total that will be launched over the next 4.5 years. And how do we make it happen? There will be implementation teams that will help us implement each of the 110 actions over the course of the next 4.5 years. And so those teams will include educators, will include community members, various leaders, students as appropriate. If they're not on the actual implementation team, there will be advisors to the plan or particular action as well. And that's how we'll go about trying to, there'll be parents on various actions as well. So all of us will have a part to play in sort of moving it forward, right? It's not just going to be Mo Green or DPI. We certainly have to do our part, but if we're left, if we think that this plan is going to be successful, only with the work of DPI, Department of Public Instruction, then this plan will absolutely fail. It will absolutely fail, but it will be successful, and I know it will be successful because so many other people will do their part to make it successful.
You talk about this is North Carolina's plan, and folks coming together to make it a success. If folks come together to make this a success, how will this benefit educators, families, students, and so on?
Yeah, so, I mean, ultimately, at the top of all of this are our students, right? And so I tell folks that what I want us to be sure that we're focused on is when our students walk across the graduation stage, that they have, so they've graduated, number one, right? And I should remind folks that we have this year the highest graduation rate, four-year cohort graduation rate in the history of North Carolina. But when and it's 87.7%, so if you go back even like 10, 15 years, we were in the 70s, right? People don't really appreciate the incredible work that's been done already. But when they walk across the graduation stage, I want them to have taken and passed a college level course, and taken and passed a career and technical education course, and again, that they show that they have great character, be it through service to their community or some other way. But these are all things that we want. So that's at the top. How we get there then absolutely has to require educators. And so there's a pillar focused on our educators, revered public school educators, which we'll dive into more, I'm sure. But for our students to do this, then we have to be sure that we're taking care of our educators. Certainly got to advocate for substantial increases in compensation for our teachers. We've got to be sure that we're thinking about things that are within our control or more in our control, even if we don't get certain resources, and that is providing space and time for our educators. So there are things that we have to do that will benefit them. There are things we have to do to benefit families. You talked about parents. This year we just launched the new student information system, Infinite Campus, which is providing our parents with much more access to information about what's going on with their children. We'll expand on that as well. And so there are lots of things that will benefit all of the folks who are critically important to our students ultimately being successful.
You talked about teacher pay. We still don't have a state budget. Governor Stein has his own proposal. The Senate has its own proposal. The House as well. They have an idea of what teacher pay raises should be. Do you think we're on the right track when it comes to addressing that? I've been covering the Carolinas, North Carolina specifically, for a better part of a decade, and that's still, and even before that, that's still been a concern. Do you think we're in the right direction when it comes to addressing that?
No. Just to expand on that, as many folks in this room know, whether you know the data or just see it in the paychecks that you receive, you know that we are not compensating our educators. And let me be really clear when I say educators. I'm absolutely talking about teachers, but I'm talking about more than our teachers.
Yes.
So I'm talking about our cafeteria workers, our bus drivers, our custodians, our counselors. I mean, the list is long. So we're not compensating our folks as we should be across the nation where there's data, particularly for teachers. You'll know that we're like 43rd or so in the country with how we're paying our teachers. And so we're not in the right direction. Now, what I will say is the governor, I believe, when he put out his budget proposal, was heading in the right direction, right? Pretty substantial increases for teachers. And then I would also say that the House put out a budget that I was going to say, guys, let's sign off on that because it's not fully where we need to be, but it is moving in the right direction. The Senate basically said, guys, go back because what you are doing isn't close to what we need for our educators. And so with no budget, then I feel like there's no other, I can't imagine that any answer can be other than no, we're not where we need to be. I continue to be hopeful that we can continue to try to advocate for increases and that the General Assembly will pass a budget that will have substantial increases for our educators, including our teachers.
Almost a year in office, what are the conversations like with families, with educators, with community stakeholders? I mean, now, again, as we talked about, we have no state budget. We're in day 11 of a government shutdown. What are the conversations happening right now?
Yeah, so I would put them in sort of two buckets, if you will. So on the one bucket, and then a lot of this comes from not only sort of recent conversations, but the entire, I mentioned earlier, the tour that I did across the state. And now with the strategic plan, we're going back out to be sure folks know about the plan. And so lots of opportunities for lots of conversations. The two buckets that I'll talk about, one is folks appreciate a lot of what's going on in our public schools and lift up a lot of wonderful things that are going on in our public schools, right? And so, talk about, the various programs that we have. North Carolina is an absolute national leader on things like early colleges and dual enrollment. Folks talk about the kind of education that our students are getting where they can be both in high school and enrolled in college courses while still in high school. People talk about our educators, right, and the wonderful work that they do. I could go on and on, but I fully appreciate that there's a lot of positivity out there. The second bucket is almost the exact opposite, right? There are a lot of folks who are lifting up enormous concerns about our public schools. At the top of the list would be probably funding. We sort of touched on it with educator compensation, but it's even broader than that. I mean, and so again, just for context, because people sort of feel and see it, but maybe don't have the context to put around it, right? That how woefully underfunded our public schools are. The context that I would provide is if you use, and there are different reports that come out, but one that I'll lift up is the Education Law Center making the grade. Every year they basically say, using federal, state, and local dollars, where is each state with how much they are putting into public education as far as funding, and they also say with regards to sort of the progressive nature of their funding, how equitable is the funding, and then what is the how much can they put into funding based on how much they actually have? Because a really poor state, you would say, well, maybe they just can't really afford to put a whole lot into education, and so let's not give them the hard knock, because they may be doing what they can based on what they have. So where does North Carolina sort of sit in those sort of things, right? So North Carolina sits essentially at the bottom with regards to overall funding. About $5,000 less than the national average, about $3,000 to $4,000 less than even Virginia and South Carolina, our border states, per child. We have 1.5 million children who are educated in North Carolina's public schools. So you times, even to say, let's just get to where North and South Carolina are, you're talking about $3,000 to $4,000 more times $1.5 million per child. Billions of dollars, right? With regards to sort of this progressive nature of where we are, North Carolina is actually sort of reasonably high with that, right? That we do a reasonably good job with how we distribute funding. There's absolutely more work we can do, but compared to other parts of the country, reasonably good. And then finally, how much can we afford to put in, right? We are not a poor state. And so we're again, almost at the very bottom, like 48, 49 with regards to how much we could put in versus how much we actually are. So people are lifting that up. they're lifting up the competitive nature that we find ourselves in, where our taxpayer dollars are now going to fund children going to private schools, right? With the taxpayer-funded private school voucher program. And people lift up that as a deep concern. And now more recently, people are lifting up what's going on at the federal level. Right? What's happening with the Department of Education and the efforts to dismantle. And I tell folks, look, I don't know how many folks it takes to press a button to be sure that the money still comes, but I need that person to still be there for the money to still come. Right? I'm deeply concerned because a lot of the money that when the federal government shuts down, thankfully, is advance funded or forward funded for education. So a lot of that money is still flowing. What I'm deeply concerned about is there are buckets of money that are not forward funded. The most significant of which is child nutrition. It is funded on a reimbursement model. And so each month schools spend money to feed children, and then funds come in to reimburse that funding, right? And so we're deeply concerned about what's going to happen this month, even this month, with regards to funding. And so that's a place where we've got to be sure that we're advocating, because, I mean, you take the community, half or more of our students are funded through free or reduced price meals. And for a lot of our children, these are maybe the only meals they're getting. And so that's a deep concern. So there are some hallelujah, great moments, great things, and things that folks are shaking their head with deep, deep concerns about.
With that being said, when it comes to funding, I remember back in August, I remember the WCNC Charlotte, we covered this. I got a chance to listen to the press conference, but you stood next to Attorney General Jeff Jackson and announced a lawsuit against the federal government to prevent, North Carolina from losing $165 million to funding public schools. Any update on those efforts?
Yeah, so the good news is after Attorney Jackson and about 24 other attorney generals and a couple of governors filed that lawsuit, and many folks across the nation advocating, and even Republican senators sending a letter over to the administration, which was about over $7 billion nationwide that was being withheld. And again, let's be real clear. This was money that was appropriated by Congress that the administration had signed off on to have flow starting July 1. That they said, well, we're not going to do that. The good news is that the money did flow. It should not have taken any act of anybody for the money to flow. Right? You might make different decisions with a new budget, but for money that should have already been flowing, it should have continued to flow. So that money did flow. Half of it flowed when in sort of the July, August time frame. And then we were, as I tell folks, I was concerned about whether the rest was going to flow come October the 1st. It has. And so we're pleased to see that. But we have to keep that, to me, if you ever needed sort of a signal of, you have to keep your eyes wide open on what may happen. We have got to be sure that we keep our eyes wide open. Let's not just sort of assume that even though money was forward funded, that they won't do something along the way, right? And so let's be sure we continue to advocate on it. But yeah, the money is flowing. The lawsuit, the parties have agreed to dismiss the lawsuit. And so very appreciative of Attorney Jeff Jackson. When I and others reached out, he said, we'll absolutely do this, and we'll Mo, are you willing to sign an affidavit to stand up on behalf of North Carolina to state the facts for us? He said, you don't worry about that. I'm absolutely willing to do that. But I so appreciate him saying we will do this for North Carolina and ultimately, as I say, for the benefit of the entire community that we got that clear.
I have one last question when it comes to funding and as it relates to public schools. So the U.S. Department of Education announced recently that it's releasing $500 million to the charter schools program, marking the largest investment ever in the program. That grant includes $53 million over 5 years to the North Carolina Association for Public Charter Schools, which of course supports charter schools across the state. I just want to get your thoughts on this regarding this and how it impacts or how it would impact public schools here in North Carolina.
Yeah, so I appreciate that in my role, I am supportive of all public schools, which do include our public charter schools, right? And so I want all of them to advance. When the Association for Public Charter Schools submitted its application for funding, I did submit a letter of support. My letter was really focused on a particular program that they wanted to put in place, which was around finances and trying to be sure that our charter school leaders get a lot more training on financial issues, because that is an area where there's absolute room for growth among our charter school leaders. And so, I was pleased that they were able to get, they got even more funding than I thought, that I was being supportive of. But know this, that from my vantage point, we are looking to work hand in hand with the association to benefit our charter schools and the students who are attending our public charter schools as well.
All right, one final question. So obviously here today we have educators, we have families, we have community stakeholders here who want the best for public schools. Any advice, any words of advice for folks here this morning?
Yeah, so advice. Let me start this way with a sincere thank you, first of all, right? So to parents, thank you for allowing us to educate your children. 84% of students who are eligible to attend schools are attending public schools, and so we need to be reminded that the vast majority of our students are being educated in our public schools. And so to parents, thank you for allowing us to do that. To our educators, thank you. Right? Many of you have heard, but I want to be sure that I reiterate it here, that I revere each and every one of you for the work that you do. So I have to start with thanks before I get to any kind of advice that I might provide. As far as advice is concerned, stay in the game, number one. Do not give up, right? It will be real easy in these moments to say, I'm checking out, right? Or I'm gonna step aside, but don't do that. For the benefit of our children, please, I request of you to stay engaged. Second, depending on your particular role or avenue or lane, continue to do that work and do it exceedingly well. So if you're an educator in the classroom, do that work and do it exceedingly well. If you're a parent, do that work and do it exceedingly well. And then on top of that, as I mentioned earlier, there's a strategic plan that's now in place. We'll have implementation teams. It would be so beneficial for you or you through your organization to find what speaks to you in the actions. You can go online, NCDPI, and look at all of the actions and say, this is the one that I want to be a part of. And join that team, or try to let us know you're interested in that. So that when we're putting together teams, we can consider them. advocating for our children in whatever ways make sense. You know, I like to remind folks that there's a lot of noise out there, a lot of noise about public schools. A lot of it is false. It's false. We have to be sure that we're telling the true stories about our public schools, particularly the awfully good things that are happening in our public schools. Let me just give you a couple of examples, and I'm gonna wrap this up. But as I went around the state, folks would come up to me and say, "Mo, we need to have more career and technical education courses. Our kids need to be doing more of that." And depending on how much gray was in their hair or how little hair they may have, they need to be doing more vocational education, right? And I went back to the team, well, we got to do more. And my team said, "Mo, do you realize we are second in the country with regards to the number of students who are participating in career and technical education courses? Second in the country." The noise would suggest something else. The noise would suggest, I already talked about graduation rate, the highest in the history of North Carolina. The noise would suggest that our kids will not rise to the occasion, so we shouldn't be thinking about career, dual enrollment and things like that. Turns out that our kids, when they are given the opportunities, will do exceedingly well. Wait for some news to come out the next month around some things about North Carolina. Wait for the news. And understand that the noise that comes around is simply that. There's a lot of wonderful things going on. There are also challenges, absolutely. We are equipped to deal with the challenges. Make no mistake about that. I know as I go across this state, educators are well equipped to deal with it. If we get enough resources, we can make it happen. So I would just submit to you, be sure that you share, that you are a champion of public education, that you believe in public education, that you know that there are great things going on, and that you're ready to address the challenges that may be out there as well. That's what I would share as advice.
Let's give another hand for All right, as I mentioned before, we have breakout sessions right after this. So let's dismiss to get you guys to breakout sessions. They begin still at 9:50? 9:50, so we have a few minutes to get there. Again, thank you for your time.